Hi, I'm Emily. Welcome to episode 11 of Holding the Sticks, a hockey themed fiber arts podcast. Welcome, everyone, to my craft room here in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. Today is Monday, February 21st, 25th, 2013. My name is Emily, like I said, and you can contact me on Ravelry as Shanti Dragon and on Plurk and Twitter as Emily3022. Let's get into the pregame report. So, as most of you may know, I missed last week's podcast because I had a head cold, and you can probably still hear that in my voice a little bit. I'm feeling fine, but you know how it is. You sound worse after you're better than when you were sick sometimes, and that's how it is with me. I'm way better than I was. My voice sounds somewhat better, but I know it's not back to 100% for sure. The other thing that happened last week, and I know some of you already know about this, is that my mom, Darla, was diagnosed with breast cancer. And there are a few of you who I reached out to on some social media, and I'm so thankful for your support and all of the kind things that you have said. And it's proven again and again and again what a wonderful community that we have as fiber arts crafters. And I'm just so thankful. um, as far as mom's diagnosis goes, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it on the podcast. What I will probably do is what the Knitmore girls did when Gigi had some heart surgery about a year and a half ago. I may do like a 1 minute update kind of a thing. But like I was saying, as far as mom's diagnosis goes, the prognosis is good. We're looking at some chemotherapy, so that will be rough to get through. But mom is a fighter, and she raised all of her three daughters to be the same. And we are going to get through this together. So, any prayers, good thoughts, warm fuzzies are so much appreciated, both for mom and for we three girls, especially for mom as she goes through this. Certainly is never easy, but like I said, we're going to make it through. So, that said, let's go ahead and get on with the show. So, you may notice that this episode is a little bit more edited. I am kind of chopping this up a little bit more because I have a new webcam and I'm able to listen back to segments right away instead of waiting until everything's recorded. Now, I know I shouldn't do that too much because otherwise I'll never get an episode recorded. But it's good just to see that the camera is working properly and everything like that. So there may be a few more edits this week than you are used to. I purchased a Logitech HG webcam C615, and so far it's looking great. My colors aren't quite as true as I would like, just from looking at my screen right now. But when I get things closer up to the camera, they show a lot truer, so I think it's going to be all right. If the quality is different, I apologize. Anytime you get new equipment, there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve on how to use it. And honestly, I'm not even sure where to look to make it look like I'm looking at you and not, because when I'm looking straight at the camera, it looks like I'm looking above it. So I'm not sure how that's going to work. But anyway, just bear with me while I learn the ropes here. The new camera has autofocus. You're going to be able to see my knitting projects a lot better. Yay! That will be a lot of fun. And so I'm really excited. A little bit of administrative stuff. To be perfectly honest, in the last week, everything has been such a blur. I know that I've been mentioned on podcasts. Thank you all so much for doing that. Um, I can't remember which ones or if there were more than one. Like I said, everything has been a blur in the last week. I did receive a pattern as a gift from a very dear person on Ravelry, and I forgot to ask her if I could mention her on the podcast, so I'm not going to, but you'll see that pattern when I get into my works in progress. And I think that's it for the little administrative stuff. So this week on the podcast, I am going to be talking about my spinning. My wheel has been spinning quite nicely, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our yarn along for Valentine's Day. Tell you a little bit about getting back on track with my fitness after being sick, and I'm going to talk about one of my favorite podcasts, Knitting on the Fly. I am going to talk some hockey as always. I'm going to continue on in the Hockey 101 with different minor penalties and talk a little bit about my hurricanes and my checkers. And of course, there's always more, so stay tuned. Let's get started with the show. Let's get into some first period action in the zone. And I've got 5 objects on my needles right now. So we'll get right into the developing play. I guess this is what happens when you skip a week of podcasting. First project I have on my needles is the Beekeeper's Quilt by Tiny Owl Knits. It will look similar to this when it's finished, except for it'll all be tied together. And I just have a couple, and I hope these aren't the same squares or hexie puffs that I showed last week. Again, between missing a week and being sick and everything, I can't remember whether I'm coming or going basically. But here are 2 of the hexie puffs, and I'm pretty sure these are both since the last time I podcasted. And again, I haven't woven in my ends, so I really need to get on that, just like I said last time. Here we go. So, still have a long way to go on that project. I'm doing that on US 4 3.5 millimeter needles and with all kinds of fingering weight scrap yarn. And it's been a lot of fun doing it. It's a nice little travel project. And it's a little something new. If you get tired of one color, you can do the next one in a different color. So I like it. Second project, still on my needles, is Mork. This is a sweater by Julia Farwell Clay. It will look like this when it's finished. I am still working on the front of the sweater, and it's coming along nicely. I've just been distracted. I guess I've had a little bit of startosis lately. So here's what I have so far on the front. I'm almost, it's probably truer to color right there. Sorry about the needle clicking. So I'm almost to the part where I will start to separate here for the V-neck. And then I haven't read ahead in the pattern. I know, shame on me, you're supposed to read through the whole thing before you start. So I'm assuming I'm going to join the shoulders first and then do the sleeves, but I'm not sure. I have 3 skeins of this yarn left. It is Barocco Ultra Alpaca in color 6281, which was listed as Redwood Mix on the website. And I've got 3 skeins of this left. And I'm not sure, yeah, the color is not coming out correct at all. It is focusing nicely. I'll just have to work on my lighting as we go along. But I'm hoping that that's going to be enough to get me through this project. 1 skein per sleeve, I'm hoping is enough. We'll find out, I guess. If not, I will either order more or we'll figure something out. Maybe I'll have to check on D-stashes on Ravelry. but hopefully I won't need to do that. There is Mork. And I'm doing that on US size 6, 4.0 millimeter needles. Third project on my needles is the Knit Sampler Afghan, which I'm doing as a knit along with Apple Blossom and You podcast. It's hosted by Apple Blossom SF on Ravelry and her husband, Navy 1990. It's a fun podcast to watch, and I'm enjoying this knit along very much. You can do any 12-inch square, and it's taking place, you do 2 per month throughout 2013. So I finished the square that I showed you last week. It is square number 3 in the Knit Sampler Afghan by Coats & Clark using Red Heart Soft. This is the navy colorway, and US size 8 5mm needles. So there's that. And I started the next square, square number 4. I'm really enjoying this one, and the color isn't coming out anywhere near true. So yes, I will play with lighting as I go along here. Just a little bit of a learning curve. Those colors are navy and plum. I'm sorry, navy and grape. And that purple that's showing, it's showing brown, but it's more of a grape jelly looking purple. So the blue is showing pretty close to true. It's a little bit brighter in real life. So there's the Knit Sampler Afghan. I'm about halfway through that square. I should be able to finish that relatively quickly. And the fourth project on my needles is a new one since you have last seen me. Finally cast on for my own knit along, which I'll talk about in just a minute, but the project that I'm doing is called True Love by Chrissy Gardner, and it's a pair of socks that will look like this when they're finished. I am using Knit Picks Stroll Kettle Dyed in the wine colorway, and you can see this is a much deeper red in real life. It's hard to see cables, of course, when they're not stretched out properly, but I think these are going to be gorgeous. If you remember a couple of weeks or a couple of episodes ago, I had talked about getting a little annoyed with Magic Loop and the long cable getting in my way. So I went, and actually when I started these socks, I had some 7-inch double points by Clover. Nothing wrong with those, but they were just really long and unwieldy. So I went to my local yarn shop, Black Bear Books here in Boone. It's actually the next town over from where I live, but that's the town where I work. And I purchased some Knit Picks Harmony 5-inch double points. Love them. I'm really, really enjoying this. My only issue so far is that sometimes, you know, I'm using 3 and then a 4th one to do for the working needle. These stitches here sometimes will get spread out and kind of come off the ends of the needles. So that's my only complaint, and it's only happened a couple of times, and not sure what to do about that, but there's that. I probably just need to get some point protectors, and that will probably solve the problem, most likely. There is the True Love socks, Christy Gardner, and I'm using US size 1 Knit Picks DPNs, and they're 5 inches. Definitely don't want to go down to the 4-inch ones. They have 4-inch ones as well. I'm glad I went with the 5 because it's about perfect. So far these socks are fitting very well. It's 2, so that's good. US 1 2.25 millimeters if I forgot to do the millimeter. Okay, one more. Now, Mom, if you're watching, I don't mind if you see this hat that I'm knitting for you, but if you want to be surprised, you might want to look away for the next, oh, I don't know, 30 seconds or so. I am knitting a chemo cap for Mom, because she's going to need it here before too long. And here it is. This is the pattern that was given to me by my friend, And I wish I had remembered to ask her if I could say her name, because she's a sweetheart. This is called Soft Light by Suvi Simola. And I apologize if I didn't say that name correctly. I didn't have a chance to email her or message her to ask how to say her name, or if I could show a finished picture on the podcast. So I can't do that either, but you can get a pretty good idea of what the hat's going to look like by looking at it here. This is using Knit Picks Simply Cotton Sport in the Golden Heather colorway. They don't make the different colors of the Simply Cotton Sport anymore, unfortunately. It's a wonderful yarn. I'm actually quite in love with this hat. So if the color isn't what Mom would prefer, then I can knit her another one in a different color and keep this one for me. But there is that. I'm just really in love with this project. So I am modifying it a little bit to where the hat is supposed to be knit in garter, except for the motif. I am doing it in reverse stockinette just to give it a smoother inside, because we are hearing that your head gets a little bit sensitive during chemo. So I'm doing it so it's stockinette stitch inside. I don't mind purling. I could have just knitted it inside out, but I don't mind purling, so I'm just knitting it right side out. Okay. That's it for developing play on my needles, but I also have a new project on my wheel, so we have a little bit of spinorama today. After doing that spackle sweater, where it took me almost a whole year to spin up 2 pounds of fiber, it's so exciting to have something colorful on my wheel again. So I have got some Friends in Fiber BFL Silk. I'm doing 4 ounces, and it's in the Bollywood Bash colorway. Friends in Fiber is an awesome store if you like. Their colors are just beautiful, and they're on Etsy, so you can find them there. Here is, and that's actually showing true to color. Yay! Here's one of my bobbins. This is a bobbin of singles. Here you can see how I'm spinning it pretty thin here. I am planning on Navajo plying this to keep the colors together. I don't mind some barber pulling, but I really want to do a 3-ply, and I don't want to muddy these colors. They're already, just from the spinning, they're already a little bit muddier than they were in the braid, and I will insert a picture of the fiber right here. So you can see what it looked like before I started spinning. I'm about halfway through the second bobbin, and then I will ply it all at the same time. I decided I would do that, so that's it for Spinorama, and that's it for the first period. Let's get into the first intermission. First intermission, as you know, is the Rec League, and that's where I talk about knit-alongs or craft-alongs. Currently in my group, I'm hosting a yarn-along for Valentine's Day themed projects. It's coming to an end in about 3 days. On the 28th, I will close the thread as soon as I wake up on March 1st. And make sure you get your finished object pictures posted in the thread on my Ravelry group by then, so that I can include you in the drawing for the stitch markers. The stitch markers look like this. You will get 6 of these for knitting. I don't think they'd work very well for crochet because they don't have the, you can't open and close them. So they are stitch markers for knitting, and you can do any project that you can somehow tie into Valentine's Day. So it can be Valentine's themed, it can be something that you made for somebody for Valentine's Day, or if you can just kind of be creative and figure out a way to tie it into Valentine's Day, then that's perfectly fine. I'm not too strict on these things, and I love it when people get creative too. So it ends, like I said, on the 28th, so get your photos in to the podcast group, and you need to be a member of the group as well to win. So I haven't had anybody post in there who's not a member, but just in case, make sure you're a member in there, and I will do that drawing I'll do the drawing before the next podcast. and I will announce the winner on the next podcast. So there you go. Time for the second period. Are you ready to come on into this training room with me? I haven't spent very much time in my training room over the past couple of weeks. I was sick for about a week, and I had to work even though I was sick, so I had to save my energy for work. And it was all I could do to go in and do my work and come home and relax and try and get rested up for the next day at work. I don't like to work when I'm sick. In fact, I usually refuse because I work very closely with people. As you know, I'm a massage therapist, so I never had a fever, and I washed my hands a lot. The problem was that in this last couple of weeks, we had a lot of couples massages. The way that we are paid at work is we get paid a higher rate when we're actually working on people and a lower rate when we're not. So if we're sitting waiting for clients, for example, we get paid the lesser rate. Therefore, we did a lot of couples massages, and if I had called out sick, then the person I was doing the couples massages with would have also lost that client and not been paid for it. So, and in actuality, about 2/3 of the staff where I worked had the same cold as I did. And if we had all called out sick, we would have had to close the business. So, um, any clients that I was afraid might be immune compromised were first of all told that I had a cold, and I actually wore a surgical mask for a couple of these sessions. I have never ever had to do that, um, but I would rather do that than spread germs around. So hated doing it, but I got through it. And like I said, if I'd had a fever, I would have called out anyway. Um, it wasn't a terrible, awful, like knock you on your butt in bed for a week kind of a cold, but it was just a miserable, tired, um, stuffy head cold that you can work through. But like I said, I hate spreading germs around. If the first person who came to work with this had not done it, then none of us, the rest of us, would have gotten sick. So there's my soapbox for the week. Sorry. Anyway, so I made it through the week. On Valentine's Day, right before I got this head cold, I had my blood pressure checkup at the doctor, and the news was incredibly good. The whole reason I started my whole fitness journey was to get my blood pressure in control. Um, I see a nurse practitioner. Her name is Sue, and I love her. She is awesome. She will try and help you with diet, exercise, that kind of thing before she just gives you a pill. In my case, of course, I had to go on a diuretic to get my blood pressure under control, but I also began to make the lifestyle changes that she recommended, lowering my sodium intake and getting more active. So after a year of doing that, my blood pressure is firmly in the healthy range while being on the diuretic. And according to the doctor's records, I have lost 30 pounds. But my records say 25, but I'll go with the doctors. They've been tracking it a lot longer than I have. So 30 pounds down, healthy blood pressure. And Sue told me that I could try weaning myself off of the diuretic now. So I'm down to a half a pill a day instead of a whole one. So far, the blood pressure has gone up a little, but given that I've been sick and had some stressful news, I'd say that's pretty typical, and it's not in a dangerous range or anything. So we'll keep an eye on that. I bet it will come back down once I get back into my normal workouts. It's hard to get back into working out when you've been sick. It's hard to know when you should get back into working out when you've been sick. I started out just with walking. I did a couple of dog walks with my husband. One of them was a little less than a mile. The other one was about a mile and a half. And then last night, I got on a stationary bike again for the first time in quite a while. So, and I did a 30-minute exercise on that. My legs just felt like rubber when I finished. I thought, oh no, I've got a journey ahead of me. But we're getting to the time of year here that the weather's going to start getting nicer, and I'm going to actually restart the Couch to 5K program and try and do it at a faster pace, to try and get a faster time going. So I know I could, I could go out and just run like I had been before the weather got bad, but I want to try and run faster. So we'll see what happens with that, and I will start that probably sometime this week as long as the weather holds out. So I don't have a treadmill, so it's outside or nothing. So that's good news. And I have decided that I want to continue tracking my fitness. I know last week I talked about it just being too much of a bother, and that was just a little bit of my depression talking, I think. Um, I think I do want to track, and Apple Blossom SF from the Apple Blossom and You podcast has showed her spreadsheet that she did for her walk to Rivendell. I think she's actually doing the journey home. I can't remember. But she did it mile by mile by mile, so all she has to do is fill in each little square instead of like trying to figure out, oh, how many miles have I done and if there's fractions of miles and that kind of thing. So I'm going to probably do something like that. Either that or I will go more with what Silly Fru from Sassy Pants Knitter does with the calendar that she puts a sticker on every day when she does a certain amount of physical activity. We'll decide which one it is. But in the meantime, I did finally get my new pajamas from finishing that first day of my trip to Rivendell. And if you haven't been watching before, what I'm referring to is the aonchallenge.net, where you can track your miles and kind of follow yourself as if you're taking a journey to Rivendell. And I love The Lord of the Rings, and I love elves, so I figured Rivendell would be a good one for me. But anyway, I finally got my new pajamas. Do you want to see them? Do you want to see my new pajamas? I just got them yesterday, put them through the wash, and I'm wearing them right now. Ooh, they're bright. Here's my new pajamas. There we go. And I'll show you the little bottom because it's got a really pretty little border here around the hips, which for my body type, decorative borders around the hips are not the best idea, but they're pajamas and I like them and I think they're pretty. So there. I will wear them if I want to. These are very lightweight. It's a little too chilly to wear them right now, but I wanted to show you guys. When we go to Atlanta, the reason I bought these was so that I'd have something to wear in the room in Atlanta. It'll be perfect because it's warmer there than it is here. And they've got little capri pants and everything. So it's funny because, I've got the border around my hips, which is like the widest part of my body, and then I have these capri pants, which make me look like a hobbit, but that's okay. I love them. So that is it for in the training room. Let's go ahead and get into the second intermission. Welcome to the second intermission, Around the League, where I talk about other podcasts that I'm listening to, or books that I'm reading, or etc., blogs, anything like that. Today, I wanted to share with you one of my favorite podcasts to watch, and that is Knitting on the Fly. I know a lot of you have probably heard of it, but if not, you should go check it out. I will link to it in the show notes and probably right here if I remember. It is hosted by Katie, who is JetGirl1313 on Ravelry and Plurk. I'm not sure what other social media she is on, but Katie is so much fun. She flies planes for a living, which is so interesting to hear about. She lives in Maine, and she knits and spins, and she just makes me smile. So she talks a lot about her life, all of her ups and downs. So I personally love to see that in a podcast. I know other people prefer that things are kind of kept to a business only, show me the fiber arts and be done with it. So if you enjoy hearing about other people's lives, then you will definitely enjoy Katie. Um, I love to hear where she's been and how her flights have gone and how the weather is affecting her job and that sort of thing. So definitely check out Knitting on the Fly if you get a chance. Time to drop the puck for the third period and a little bit of hockey talk. I'm going to switch this segment up a little bit, and I'm going to put the Hockey 101 segment first so that it's easier for people who are interested in hockey in general to listen to or watch this part and then skip me blabbering on about my Hurricanes and my Checkers if they want to. So Hockey 101 is going to come first, and then I'll do the general hockey talk afterward. We are still learning about the minor penalties, and I say we because I'm learning too. There are so many penalties that can be called in hockey that it's hard to know all of them. So I've got 3 for today: charging, clipping, and closing the hand on the puck. We're going in alphabetical order if you hadn't noticed. So the first one is charging. It is a minor penalty. Charging is taking several strides or jumping into another player. It can be a minor penalty, which is 2 minutes. It can be a major penalty, which is 5 minutes, or a major and a game misconduct, depending on the violence of the hit or if the opponent is injured. If an opponent has an injury to the face or the head after you charge them, then you will get a steeper penalty. So, see what happens. Charging, usually what it looks like is somebody taking several strides and then running into or hitting or checking their opponent, and it causes a pretty violent collision usually. This can happen, you can check your opponent into the boards, the walls around the rink, you can check them into the goalposts, you can check them in just open ice. Any of these things can count. Usually when checks happen, you kind of glide into your opponent, and you're not supposed to take extra strides to hit them harder. That's the whole point. So that's what charging is. The second one is called clipping, and I have actually only heard this called once or twice in my 4 years or so of being a serious hockey fan. Doesn't happen real often. And actually, when I first saw this penalty, when I was doing the research for this episode, I wasn't sure what it was. And then I remembered I had seen this happen. Clipping is when you hit or check your opponent below the knees. They'll call you for a minor if that happens, or if an injury results, you'll get a major penalty and possibly a game misconduct. So clipping is pretty dangerous. You can imagine the speeds that the guys are skating at. If you take someone out below the knees, the flying Superman moves that can occur. So it's not a good thing to do. And the third penalty is being called a lot more often this season than I've ever seen before. It's called closing the hand on the puck. And the rule is in NHL hockey that you cannot hold the puck unless you're a goalie. You can bat the puck out of the air to the ice, but you cannot hold it in your hand and skate with it. You cannot you can't throw it to your teammate. That's called a hand pass. That's a whole different thing. You can't cover it if you fell on the ice when you're trying to get the puck. You can't put your hand over top of the puck and cover it up to keep your opponent from getting it. Basically, you just can't touch the puck unless it's just to bat it out of the air, or after a play ends, you can hand it to the referee. Of course, that doesn't apply to goalies. Goalies can cover the puck. It's how they stop play. But even a goalie cannot hold the puck in his hand for more than 3 seconds without doing something with it. Usually, if a goalie is going to hold on to the puck, he'll just put it down on the ice. It's called melting it down, and that'll stop play. He'll put it on the ice with his glove over the top of it, of course, so that they can't put it in the net. And I didn't realize that they couldn't hold it more than 3 seconds, so that's something that I learned. And goalies can't throw the puck either, so I didn't know that either. You learn something new every day. That's it for the Hockey 101. I hope that's interesting to you all. Um, to be perfectly honest, I watched or listened to all of the hockey games that occurred in the last 2 weeks, except for um, one that the Checkers played in Abbotsford, British Columbia. That started at 10 o'clock at night. I had to be at work the next day, so obviously I didn't watch that one. But the past couple of weeks have been a blur, and I don't remember specifics or anything like that. I do know that Jeff Skinner, one of the Hurricanes, one of our best forwards, is out with a concussion, which is always an object of concern. Another thing that happened over the past couple of weeks is that you remember me talking about Mikhail Jordan in the last episode. He, because of other injuries that happened in the Hurricanes, he got called up to the NHL for the first time. And I was so excited because Mikhail Jordan has been a Checker for as long as I've been a fan and has never ever had an NHL call up. And he's had such a great year, and I was just excited to see him finally get the chance. He's doing really well. He's making a good impression in Raleigh. So, and the funnest part is that when he plays in Charlotte, our radio commentator says his name, Mikhail Jordan. And when he first came up to Raleigh, John Forsland and Trip Tracy, the Hurricanes TV play-by-play and color commentator, were doing the same thing. And then 2 nights ago, they started saying Mikhail Jordan. And I was like, yay, they're saying it right. And the funniest thing was on Twitter, a bunch of people were like, he's saying the name wrong. So I had to educate people on Twitter and say, well, actually, I talked to Mikhail Jordan and we asked him, and that's how you say his name. So I love that. Welcome to the NHL, Mikhail Jordan, where they will finally pronounce your name correctly. I'm just so proud of him. It's so much fun to be a fan of the minor league team and watch the boys being called up and making the big team. As far as Zach Dalpe goes, um, he's tearing it up in the American Hockey League with the Checkers right now, and it's only a matter of time. It was kind of disheartening when a bunch of Checkers got called up because of injuries to the Hurricanes, and Zach Dalpe wasn't one of them, but he's on a tear. Scored 2 shorthanded goals the other night in Abbotsford, and good for him. It's just a matter of time. That is it for the Hockey Talk for today. Let's go ahead and get into some post-game chatter. All right, a little bit of post-game chatter. It is February, getting into late February here in the Blue Ridge Mountains and everywhere else, of course. It's always interesting to me living here in the mountains. As far south as we are, if you go in any direction off of the mountains, it's full on spring in Charlotte and Raleigh and everywhere. But here we're just beginning to see inklings of spring. My assumption is that probably down the mountain in Charlotte and in Raleigh and Winston-Salem, that the flowers are already beginning to bloom. Let me know if I'm wrong, those of you in those areas, but just from having lived in Raleigh, usually about this time of year was when you started to see some daffodils and even some pansies sometimes, it seems like. Up here, we are beginning to hear the songbirds singing in the mornings, and that is a sure sign that spring is coming. However, March is a month that we often get a lot of snow, so we are not out of it yet. In my own yard, the daffodils have poked their little leaves up through the ground, and there's little buds, but they haven't opened up yet, which is good because we're still swinging back and forth pretty far on the temperature scale. We're expecting some sleet and freezing rain tonight, actually, so hopefully that won't affect me getting to work on Tuesday. We did our taxes, which is another sure sign of spring. We did our taxes last weekend, and having been an independent contractor for the past several years, it's always a bit of a stressful thing to do the taxes. When you're an independent contractor, you have the option or requirement, depending on your level of income, to pay quarterly taxes. I never did that. I always just saved money through the year and then paid them all at once at the end. Um, so while all of my friends who were employees were looking forward to getting their tax refunds, we were always having to cough up money. So occasionally, even when I was an independent contractor, we would still get a little bit of a refund because Fox, of course, is an employee where he works. When I started working where I work now, I was hired on as an employee, and I did the happy dance because that meant I wouldn't have to do these complicated taxes anymore. Of course, I had 3 months of the old job that I did have to account for this time, so I did have to do that. And so there still was a little worry when I did my taxes this year, but oh, we're getting a refund. I'm so excited and so relieved. I'm so relieved. So we will be able to go on our trip to Atlanta and not worry about the little things, the little nice things you like to do on a vacation. We are going to Atlanta over the St. Patrick's Day weekend. We're super excited. And for Valentine's Day, my husband blew me away. Um, the reason we're going to Atlanta is for a costuming conference, and my husband builds costumes. Now, he didn't build me a costume, but he bought one for me from a dear friend of ours who allowed me to wear her costume a couple of years ago and go play. These costumes look a lot like mascot costumes, so you can put these on and nobody knows who you are, and you can just kind of let loose and be crazy. And I'll talk more about that next week. I'm going to talk more about this conference and what it's all about and everything. But the costume that my husband bought for me is a skunk. And I can't say too much because we really want to surprise people when we go to this con. And I don't think any of those folks watch this podcast, except for, I know at least one does, but he already knows. He was there for the unveiling. Y'all, I opened up the box and I almost cried. I was so excited and happy because all of these years my husband has gone and done all this costuming stuff and had all this fun, and meanwhile I'm kind of on the outskirts, you know. It was enjoyable, but still I didn't get to do all the fun costuming stuff. So I'm super excited. Other than that, I think that's about it. I am drinking, I made a big pot of tea today. I know maybe you saw me pour it a minute ago. Let's see if I can get, there's a lot of glare, but that's my little butterfly teapot that my friend gave me years ago while I was in massage school. And the little matching, I have like 6 or 8 of these little matching teacups. I love them. And it is the Twinings strawberry mango infusion that I'm drinking today. So that's probably about it for today. I hope I'm not forgetting anything. If I am, I will talk about it next week. The podcast may happen a little bit less frequently. A little bit, I might have to get a little bit flexible with my podcasting schedule. On the other hand, I may podcast more often because I know mom enjoys watching it. So if I have something to say and it's not quite time for my next podcast, I'm going to go ahead and say it. So you might see me more often sometimes. You might see me less often other times, depending on what all is going on. So until next time, may all of your fiber arts projects and your favorite hockey teams stay out of the penalty box. Bye-bye.